As a small business owner, you need to be visible in order to reach more people. So, do you want to know how you can get seen everywhere? Then you're definitely going to want to stick around. Hi, my name is Laura Beauprelant. I'm the founder of Lab Creative, the author of Brand Chemistry, and the creator of Brand Camp. And on today's Live with Laura, I'm so excited to have Lisa Simone Richards as my guest. Lisa's a PR and visibility strategist. She gets you publicity for your small business. So, Lisa, first of all, welcome and thank you for joining me today.
I'm so excited to be on Live with Laura because I don't know if you know this, my live show is Live with Lisa. So this is a nice little synergy.
I love it. It's a good alliteration. I love alliteration. So, our names start with L's, which works out well. Awesome. So, I tell clients all the time, we could create the best brand in the world for you, the most beautiful, the most powerful, the most impactful messaging in the world. But if you're not visible, nobody's going to know you even exist. And therefore, it won't be the best brand in the world. So, obviously visibility, like we can create the brand, but we need to be visible. People need to get their business and brand out there. So what do you see and how do you see PR kind of lending itself to this visibility piece?
Yeah, you know what? I say the exact same thing to people. You can be the best kept secret, or if you can build the best brand ever, but if you're the best kept secret, people simply can't work with you. And I think one of the challenges beyond staying the best kept secret and, feeling frustrated that your business isn't going where it wants to go, there are people who are looking for the information that you're putting out through your brand and through your company. So I feel like there's nothing worse than when somebody, I don't like the word competitor, but when someone else in your space who just doesn't do as good a job as you is better at putting themselves out there, and then you're putting your clients at risk because they're not hearing your message, they're hearing someone else's. So I think it's so important not only for our businesses and our brands to be able to be visible, but for the people that we want to have an impact on. We're doing them a disservice if they don't know about us. So whether someone is just getting started and putting their brand out there for the first time, maybe they've dabbled into business for a little while, or maybe they've been doing this for a long time, no matter what stage of the game you're in, visibility is always going to be important so that you're filling the top of that funnel.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's so key. And what you said there, like you could be mediocre at what you do, but be really good at getting out there and talking about what you do. And so you not sharing your amazingness with the world is actually a disservice.
If I can tell a story really briefly, because I was just at a mastermind 2 days ago, there was one person at this event. And so as a publicist, I get my clients on television, podcasts, radio, stages, whatever the medium that makes sense for is. And there was someone at this mastermind who had shared with me that they had hired an agency for typically about twice what I would charge. And they got pretty much nothing as a result. And in that moment, I was like, oh, if I had gotten to her first, I could have changed her experience so hard. She would have saved half the money and gotten a way bigger result. So it's just a reminder that we get to save our clients from putting themselves in potentially bad situations.
Yeah, definitely. So what are the top sort of mistakes that you're seeing business owners make when it comes to PR and visibility?
There are a few things. The first thing, like anyone that I'm working with, number one, let's start with intention. What is the purpose of being seen? So one mistake that I see is people aren't intentional and they're not clear. They're just like, I just want to be seen. So something I like to start people off with is thinking about what I call the ABCs of visibility. A stands for awareness. Are you in a position where you want to get in front of your ideal client? So, I, by virtue of having been a personal trainer in the past, I tend to attract a lot of like fitness studio owners my way. And they'll say to me, Lisa, I work with women who are going to the gym for the first time, and I want to be featured in Oxygen, Muscle and Fitness magazine. I'm like, guess what those ladies aren't reading? Those magazines. So we have to step out of ourselves and what we like, but think about, okay, where is my client paying attention so I can build brand awareness? So that's A. B stands for buzz. Are you about to launch something? Are you putting something out there for the first time and you want to see a huge surge and spike in attention and sales? Well, then you need to be focusing on getting in multiple places at once, because we can't just show up once and expect people to have a response to what we're putting out there. So are you in a stage where you're focusing on building buzz? Finally, the C stands for credibility. So maybe someone's in a stage where they're not necessarily hustling to get that next client in the door, but they really want to elevate their thought leadership. They want to elevate their expert status, and they want to see their name and their brand mentioned alongside the, quote unquote competitors or other people that they've looked up to. So those are three different types of visibility, whether you're looking for awareness, buzz, or credibility. So really leaning into what is the purpose of being seen in the first place. Now we're going to make sure that you're doing PR and visibility strategies that actually make sense for the result that you want to create.
Oh, I love that. Awareness, buzz, credibility. Amazing. If anybody here is joining us live and you've got questions, pop into the comments and we'll make sure that Lisa answers those. So that brings up a question that I have, which is knowing, once you've determined, is this awareness, buzz, or credibility, are there different platforms that are better for each of those things?
Absolutely. So I think especially in the online marketing space, we see so many cookie cutter approaches like everyone should be on podcasts or everybody should be on X platform. It really comes down to a marriage of business goals and personality. So we were just talking about ABC's awareness, buzz, and credibility and being clear on what you want to create there. So, one of my a client that I worked with in 2015, actually, they had a bricks and mortar rehab center, sports specialist rehab center, they're chiropractors. So they would get on national television. So for the Canadians who are watching this show and you're familiar with The Social, they'd be on homes from BC all the way to the East Coast. But when they have a bricks and mortar business in Toronto, if you can't walk in their doors, it doesn't make a difference one way or another. So it does make a lot of sense to pay attention to how does visibility make sense for my business specifically. So being aware of that first off is going to be important. But the other thing to pay attention to is who are you as a person? Like, luckily, those two, they're identical twin chiropractors from that studio. Luckily, they were able to go on live television for the first time and do a great job and be invited back. But there are some people who, maybe don't have that only child syndrome that I do or that they might have, loving being in front of the camera. And the idea of being on live TV is going to be deer in headlights. You're not going to be as confident. So maybe a podcast where you're not necessarily under the pressure of live television is what's going to make sense. So really understanding, number one, what are those business goals? What's the result I want to drive? But then also leading into, where do my strengths lie? Am I better at having a conversation with somebody on Clubhouse, on the radio, on a podcast? Am I a really good writer and I should be contributing articles to various places? Or do I have only child syndrome like me and want to step on stage and have everyone paying attention to you? So it's not a cookie cutter approach or a cookie cutter answer. It's really about understanding business goals and who you are as a person. And then when we pull those two things together and we're not trying to put a round peg into a square hole, that's when we're going to create a really magical result that not only is positive for your business, but truly feels aligned for you as well.
I love that. I talk about alignment all the time. And it is so interesting because, you can't go from being like an introvert who doesn't even take photos or videos of yourself to suddenly being on live television or on a stage, right? Like there's a lot of little steps that needs to happen in between those two stages. It doesn't mean that one day you're not going to be ready for live TV or ready for a stage, but you can't go from that 0 to like 100 miles an hour in no time flat.
And, even thinking about that 0 to 100, something I like to walk people through is what I call my ladder of publicity. So for those people who are just getting started and they're not too sure and they're building their confidence, to be honest, maybe consider something like written publications where you're being interviewed and someone's writing an article about you. And maybe they're just emailing you or getting on a phone call with you to ask questions. Maybe you're the person who's writing the content and, you can finish an article, come back to it 24 hours later and edit it. You can pass it to Anne Sally to get her feedback on it. And then when you feel rock solid and confident in it, then you can hit publish. That's something that's going to really feel good for someone who maybe is a bit of a control freak and a perfectionist and getting started for that first time. As that confidence is growing and building, we can move up to the next rung on the ladder. And this is where you're getting heard. So like I mentioned before, maybe I think everybody who's watching this, whether you're live on the replay, you have had a successful conversation at one point or another in your life. So that could mean, great, now we can move to radio, we can move to podcasts, we can move to Clubhouse. A little more putting yourself out there than doing writing, but not as much exposure as getting to the top of that ladder, which is being seen. Maybe that's doing a live stream just like this on someone else's platform. Maybe it's live television, maybe it's a live or a virtual stage. There's so many different ways, but if you move up those 3 stages, you're building your confidence along the way. So by the time you get to the top, you're feeling real good about it. You've had some practice, you've dialed in that messaging. But even beyond that, one thing that you're creating as you move through those 3 levels is you're creating what I call a healthy media mix. And we get to remember that our clients love to consume content differently. So maybe one person does prefer to read articles, someone else likes to listen to a podcast while they're in the car, or somebody else prefers to visually consume content. Now, no matter how somebody likes to consume their information, you're actually serving that audience in their preferred way of consumption.
Yeah. And even if they don't, look at or read or watch everything, they start to see you in all these places. So maybe they pick their chosen, like, oh, I like to watch videos or I like to listen while I'm walking. But then they see you in all these other places. And I've had that comment, people like, oh my gosh, I see you everywhere, Laura.
Mm-hmm.
And so they may not be consuming everything I'm putting out there, but they'll consume the things that are the right medium for them, but they're seeing me.
And do you know what I like to think about on the flip side of that as well? That people are consuming you in one of 3 different ways. I mean, before anyone takes out a credit card to work with somebody or even go pick up sushi down the street, a lot of us go to Google to see reviews and make sure we're investing in the right place. Is this the best resource that I can choose? So imagine if someone were to Google the name of your business, your brand, your company, yourself personally, however you're positioned, and they see you showing up in all of these different places. Even if they don't listen to the podcast or watch the video, there's this solidification of, oh, they're showing up on all these platforms outside of their own website and their own social media platforms. They must have some sort of expertise to them, that they have been vetted and selected by all of these different outlets that have highlighted their expertise. So we also want to remember our clients are really thinking about where to invest their dollars. And when they see you showing up as that expert authority who's on multiple different places, that creates the confidence to know, okay, I'm making a good decision because this person has been vetted. They have been chosen and selected to be seen on these platforms.
Yeah, it builds that credibility for sure, no matter.
It's like when someone gets featured on Forbes. Like, how often do we read the Forbes article? We're just like, oh my God, you're on Forbes. That's incredible.
Yeah, you get to put the little Forbes logo on your website, as seen in, those things build up your credibility. Absolutely. And they can be an important part of the decision-making factor for potential clients. They want to feel like they're in good hands. Like, oh, this publication or this person wouldn't feature her or him or whoever if they weren't, somebody that was trustworthy. So it builds that trust factor. And if people, especially if it's, if they can hear you, like if it's voice or video, they actually feel like they get to know you so much more. And I've had people sign up with me and they're like, I feel like I know you already. They're like, I feel like I know you better than you know me because they've been watching my videos and they've been seeing me in different places. So it's so interesting that they just get a sense of who you are as a person. And that, I tell people all the time, you want to create that heart-to-heart connection with your audience. And if you can do that through the videos and through the content and through the PR, then people are just going to know that you're the only choice for them, right? Then there is no competitors because you become in a category of one.
People want to connect with other people and know who they're interacting with and know that they like them and that there's a similar value operation there. And even beyond the connection and that know, like, and trust factor that we're building, when you think about even using consistency in your messaging, whether it's on a stage or a live stream or an article, I often think about one of my clients, Nora Deborah. She is a preconception health coach. So she works with women who want to get pregnant. And one of her methodologies is the 4 R's of getting pregnant. So I'm not a health coach. Bear with me as I try to really briefly skim through this, but her system is all about remove the bad things, replace them with good things, repair your gut system, and rebalance your hormones. And she talks about that over and over and over again. And you know what's awesome? When people come to her to work with her, they're repeating her 4R methodology to her. So how cool is it to know that, okay, I've got a system, people understand, they've heard it over and over again. And now when leads come to me, they're even more qualified because they come to this call, this introduction or consult call, knowing my methodology, repeating it back to me. And at that point, it's a way easier sale because this person's already enrolled themselves.
Exactly. And I think this is where the work I do dovetails into what you do, because without that brand, without the messaging, without the clarity on your unique way of doing things, you know, it's a lot harder to show up consistently and create something that is really powerful if you're sort of wishy-washy or you're not clear, you sound like everybody else, right? So once you get that clarity on your brand and the confidence, then you can just put it out there in the world and be consistent and build that visibility.
There are some C words that I love there: clarity, consistency, and there was another one that I can't remember right now, but they're like all in the last 10 seconds. But that consistency of message is so powerful. And even for anyone who's listening to this and kind of thinking, I mean, people are going to get bored of hearing me say the same thing over and over again. Not at all. Like, I mean, I find for me, I'm a little bit bored of repeating my message all the time, but you know what's really awesome? If I was at an event and a speaker canceled, I could hop on stage immediately and fill that spot because I have that consistent messaging that I use over and over again. And something powerful that I learned from a speaking coach is don't change your talk, change your audience. So how powerful is it when you nail in on that message, that consistent branding that you want to put forward, and you can take it and use it over and over and over again, but just put it in front of new people. It makes it so, I don't want to say brainless and mindless for you, but it makes it easy. But for somebody else, this is something new that they're digesting. And as they start to learn about you, they're hearing about this over and over again. And they're like, okay, this person, I know what I can expect from them. They're consistent.
Yeah, the reality is you're repeating the message, but you want to grow your audience. That's the whole point. So all of these new people will not have heard your messaging before. So it's about welcoming them in and inviting them to get to know you and what you do and to hear that. So I would love to chat a bit about, you know, paid advertising versus organic advertising, because I feel like a lot of times people think, oh, I need to create, you know, Facebook ads. I need to do all of these things and, you know, or do PR. So I'd love your take on sort of the paid versus organic.
And, you know, I want to be honest, you know, not like I haven't dabbled in Facebook ads and hired an agency before. There is a time and a place. And I'd love to make the distinction between, we've got social media where we own our platforms. We can create our content. We put it out exactly as we want to, when we feel like it, the way we want to do it. And no one is telling us what to do. But again, it takes a lot of time to be on social media. It's a very noisy space. There are a ton of other people out there. So you don't have as much reach. The content doesn't live as long. When it comes to paid advertising and paid media, honestly, when you think about advertising and what that looked like 20 years ago, it was put a billboard up by the highway and hope the right person sees it. Maybe advertise on, you know, Friday night, that 7 to 9 family fun hour, and hope the right people see it. How powerful is it that now, not me, because I don't know how to work Facebook ads, but my ad manager can go into Facebook and say, I'm looking for women between 35 and 40 who have these interests, who are like, we can get so specific in who's going to see our content. And I really do think that's a blessing. But I also do like to remind people, like, it's a very expensive game to play. You're paying your agency. And if you're paying an agency a fee, you want to, at the very least, match that agency fee in your ad spend. You probably want to go beyond it. And the one thing about ads is with Facebook, the second I turn off my ad spend, guess what? There is no trace of me left behind. I am gone. They're not generously going to keep my content out there. It disappears. And we know a lot of social content has a short lifespan as well. So one of the reasons that I really loved earned media and getting onto television stages, etc., especially even podcasts, that content lives on forever. Guest blog posts that I wrote 5 years ago are still on the internet. Podcast interviews where I just took 30 minutes of my time to have a conversation with someone. If it has a good SEO title, someone who's searching a topic on a podcast will be able to find that interview for years to come. So I love the idea of doing something once for a few minutes and letting that content work for you repeatedly over and over and over again. So with that earned media, not only are you getting that exposure that not just everybody can get, because anyone can buy an ad, anyone can be on social, but not just anyone gets those kind of opportunities. And beyond that, it continues to do the work for you after the fact.
Yeah, I literally we signed up a client a month ago, maybe, who saw me on a live stream on a YouTube channel, was fairly prominent 2 years ago.
Right? How incredible. Like, when I think about how I want to invest my time, that's what I want to do all day, every day. Do something once and let the content work for me for years to come.
Yeah, I think that is super powerful. So do you have any tips you can share on, you know, okay, people are like, all right, I I'd like to get on TV. I'd like to get on a podcast or get on whatever. Like, do you have some tips that you could share with people just to start to like do some of their own brainstorming and start the work?
100%. One of the things I'm trying to think about, how do we distill this into something? So one of the mistakes that I see people make when they are searching for publicity and visibility opportunities, excuse me, is they make it all about themselves. Hey, this is me. This is what I do. This is what my company does. Want to put me on a TV segment for 4 minutes? No, they'll direct you to the advertising department for that. You can put down $100,000 if you just want to talk about yourself on TV for 7 minutes. So what I really encourage people to do is think about what is the value for someone who is listening to, watching, or reading this content. How can they leave the end of a segment richer than they came? So it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be talking about yourself for 4 minutes, but can you speak to something and create some small wins and some momentum for them? So I was just getting off a call with a client and we were talking about, he has a book coming out. And it's like, okay, we're not just going to talk about you wrote a book, but what are some things people can take away from this book? What are 3 questions you can ask yourself to feel inspired? That's a great segment. And at the end of it, people can move through their day and ask themselves those questions and actually get a real result for them. So I always like to think about it from the perspective of how can I create value for someone? How can I create a short-term win through my media appearance so that someone can take that step, get a positive result, and get that momentum going? Because now that the wheel is turning, they're going to be like, okay, that worked. What's the next step? Because I don't want to stop this momentum. And then who are they naturally going to go back to for step number 2? So when you lead with value, when you're searching for PR and visibility opportunities, and you're not just like, hey, let's talk about me for a while, that's when you're actually going to connect with people, because everybody is tuned into WIIFM, what's in it for me. So if we can lead with value for someone else and they get a win from it, they are naturally going to come back to us when they want to take the next step.
I love that. So how do people go about actually finding these? So say, you figured this out. You're like, okay, I know what's in it for you. I know what the win is I can provide for you, for your audience. How do you even go about finding these opportunities?
Yeah. And I mean, it's going to depend on what the outlet is. If you've realized, okay, television is the thing that makes sense for me. Podcasts are the thing that makes sense for me. So I'm going to lean with podcasts because this is something easy for people to be able to actually take and put into practice. See what I'm doing there? I'm giving value. I'm giving you something you can do in 10 minutes and get a win from it. When it comes to podcasts specifically, a lot, especially because I work with a lot of people in the online space, this is a great way to be able to reach a digital audience. So something that I say to them when they're like, Lisa, I literally wouldn't even know what show to begin with. Success leaves clues. I do not believe in copying, to be crystal clear, but I absolutely believe in drawing inspiration from. So one thing you can do is think about who is somebody in my space who is otherwise known as a competitor. I don't love that word. I believe in collaboration over competition all day, every day. But who's somebody who's 3 to 5 steps ahead of where you want to be, where you want to see your brand, someone who does something in that space. Go on Google, type in their name or type in that company name along with the term podcast. And what's going to pop up are a bunch of shows that individual or a representative from that company has been featured on. And now what you know is, okay, this is a podcast that speaks to this topic. It resonates with the ideal audience I want to get in front of. And I know that they do interviews. So while they may have interviewed somebody who does something similar to what I do, what's another angle I can approach it with to get access to that audience? And if you just start off with that path, think about 5 people who are 3 to 5 steps ahead of you, Google their name plus podcast, it will start showing you a bunch of opportunities that will make sense for you. And now you just need to come at it from a creative perspective of how can I add value from a different angle so that I can get my foot in the door here.
I love that. Something that you talked about, I think earlier, was this content, right? Like, so we're content making machines right now. There's so much. I heard that we see like so many words a day and so many videos and so much content, and it's that much harder, right? That the saying, it takes people 6 to 8 times to see you before they're likely to buy. I heard it's even higher now because it's like closer to 20 because there's just so many are just overwhelmed, basically. So we're creating all of this content and we want visibility. So can you share sort of your thoughts on like the difference between content and visibility, or are they the same thing?
No, they're soapbox.
I knew the answer to that, but it was a bit of a leading question.
I know you know the answer, but this is something that, like, as you can tell, I get pretty fired up about. So when people come to work with me, the thing that I hear the most, especially even when people are joining my Facebook community and I ask them what they're challenged with, they feel like they're creating so much content, but not actually seeing a return from it. from it. And I love being crystal clear on the distinction between content and visibility. So content, what we're putting on our own social networks, how we're showing up on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, all those other properties, that is going to nurture the people who are already in our space. Gone are the days when you could do a post on Instagram and use hashtag business coach and think that that was going to bring clients your way. That's not how it works anymore. So when we're putting out content, it's for the people who are already a part of our ecosystem. Now, like I mentioned before, we need to consistently be filling that funnel with, or that pipeline with new leads. So visibility is actually getting in front of new people, and then they can follow you, and then they can see that content, and the content works for you. So when I'm thinking about visibility, my distinction is I don't want to just get seen and create content. I want to leverage somebody else's platform. So Laura, this is a perfect example of this. I do live with Lisa, as we talked about at the beginning of this, in my own Facebook group, but by going live with you, now I'm exposed to a whole nother audience, and we're creating such a win-win of somebody who didn't know me before is getting content that hopefully leaves them richer than they came. You're delivering extra value to your audience. I'm getting in front of new people. Everybody wins in this situation. So again, once I do this visibility work, now if people follow me on Instagram or come on my email list or join my Facebook group, the content that I'm creating is working. But to just make content for the same 500 or 1,000 people over and over and over again, and then wonder, why aren't my sales growing? Well, that's why. You're just doing it in front of the same people. We need to keep bringing more people in. So think about content and visibility as two completely different things.
Yeah. So I'll share a quick story, an example of that totally fits. So I always think, when was that? Let's say 4 years ago, because COVID, you always just have to add 2. I was going to say 2 years. And I'm like, no, I think it's actually 4 years. I think it was 2018. I did a keynote, spoke in front of an audience, a bunch of people joined my email list. I had calls with some people I worked with, and somebody joined my list. It wasn't the right time. Something didn't happen. Anyway, fine. She stayed on my email list. And then for whatever reason, I think it was 2 years later, one of my emails just spoke to her. The timing was right. She'd been getting my content all along, and she signed up for Brand Camp with me. After 2 years of hearing me, right? That's the visibility. Mm-hmm. But it was then the content of her getting my emails, seeing me, showing up, whatever. And then she signed up with me 2 years later. So you can be visible, but if then you've got nothing to follow it up,
yep,
then they're going to forget about you too.
And you know what I hope we can leave people with too, is because I just had the exact same experience that you did. Like I was saying, I just got off a call with a new client, and as we were wrapping up our onboarding call, he said to me, Lisa, I joined your email list maybe 1-2 years ago. And as I've been following your stories, I didn't engage with you until a month ago, but as I was going through your content and I saw you show up over and over again, building that know, like, and trust factor, essentially, when the timing was right, where did he go to? So it's such powerful feedback that you heard that from a client, that I got that from a client. So we're not just here sharing some information, some ideas from our head. This is literally what we have heard from the people who have decided to take that step.
Yeah, we're sharing our own stories of how this has impacted our businesses, which I think it's easy for us to just, as you say, get on our soapbox and talk about branding and talk about PR and from the expert position that we both have. But it's also from we are entrepreneurs, we are business owners, we are seeing this work actually impact our businesses.
It's so powerful to actually ask your clients, where did you find me? How long have you been following me? Because I think sometimes, I mean, I can't speak for anyone else, but I know for me, I'm but I just did this awesome thing. How come you're not jumping in right away? And then I remember, you know what, Lisa, as a consumer as well, you're not necessarily in right away. You need to get there for the time that you're ready to jump in. So it's just thinking about future you and positioning yourself well for those opportunities. And again, building that know, like, and trust factor. So, the visibility to bring people in, the content to nurture them. And then as they're ready and you make an offer, they're like, you know what, this person's consistent. I've been following them for a while. I like their personality and I want to engage with them.
Yeah. And I think we often make the mistake when we're oh, nobody's listening, nobody's paying attention, nobody's replying, nobody's commenting, whatever the thing is. But a lot of people are noticing, but they're not commenting or liking or sharing. And we're so in need of this gratification. But I've had it too, where people that I had no idea they were consuming my content at all, I would meet them or see them and they would say, oh my gosh, I love what you say. I love how you're putting it out, all of these things. I'm like, I didn't even know they were paying attention. So it just goes to show that that being visible and that creating that content, you actually don't know who is paying attention. And it can be hard because we want that gratification. But I think it's just that reminder to keep going and keep putting out amazing content for your audience.
Absolutely. They're the lurkers. I remember doing a launch and there are the people who are like commenting on all my videos and whatnot and engaging with me, which I absolutely love and appreciate. And then I saw Pay in Full come through on PayPal and I was like, who's this? I've literally never heard this person's name before. And she was like, oh, I've been watching you in the background. The time was right. So I just jumped in. I was like, all these people are talking to me all the time and maybe they're not ready right now, but someone who I'd never engaged with has been following me and just did an immediate Pay in Full right there on their credit card.
Interesting. Yeah, it's not always the ones who comment and like your posts that are going to be the ones that are going to sign up. It's a good lesson right there. Amazing. Any last thoughts before we wrap up that you want to share?
Oh man, I think the one thing that I do say on repeat all the time is if someone has taken 30 minutes, if you've taken 30 minutes to listen to this interview, don't just be like, wow, this is some really great information. I wrote some notes on it. What is one thing from this conversation that you're like, I can put that into practice today and use that to make a difference for my business? Whether it's getting clarity on if you're looking for awareness, buzz, or credibility, or maybe it's on Google, going on Google and doing that search. Drill into what is the one thing I can take away from this because I've already put 30 minutes in and now let me put it into practice so that you're actually going beyond information into actual transformation.
Yeah. And then go and tag Lisa and I in that, whatever you do, and let us know so we can cheer you on. Lisa, where can people find you? How can they connect with you? How can they learn more about you? Please share your details.
Yeah. So for people who are hearing me talk about, there are all these different ways you can get out there. You could be in print or you can be on television. They're like, okay, Lisa, you just said like 15 different things. I don't know what to pick. I actually do have a quiz called How Should I Get Visibility? And you can take that quiz at www.lisasimonerichards.com/quiz. So I'll ask you a few questions to get to know about your brand, to get to know about your personality. And I'll share with you one of 5 ways that I think make sense for you to start getting visible. And I will also send you a training video on how to put that step into practice. So again, that's at lisasimonerichards.com/quiz. And again, you know what? I'm not the most active on Instagram, I admit that. But you know what? Actually, just yesterday, someone had heard me on a podcast. She sent me a DM. She's like, thanks so much for your info. It was great. And we've been DMing and I've just been asking her back and forth, okay, what's your next step? So follow me on Instagram, Lisa Simone Richards. Even if there isn't a story there that day, I promise I'm on it. But shoot me a message and I'm happy to have a back and forth conversation with supporting you to your next step.
Amazing. I want to go take that quiz just to see what I'm going to do that. And I'll pop the link in the comments for people as well. So if you're watching the replay or you're live, you can just click on the link. Thank you so much, Lisa. This was so valuable and just so fun. I always love chatting with you.
Oh my gosh, it's our 3rd conversation in a few months. So I absolutely love that. And again, it's just always such a pleasure to be able to share with people that there is another way. There isn't just social media. There isn't just advertising. You can actually focus on leveraging other people's platforms, which doesn't cost you as much time. It typically doesn't cost you money, but at the same time, you're really building that brand awareness and engineering your celebrity while getting visibility at the same time.
Love it. That feels like the perfect way to wrap it up. Thanks again. And thanks for everyone who joined us. Bye.